Okay, boys and girls, we're going to learn about some more explorers today. This first video is going to be about Samuel Day Champlain, and we are going to use the awesome Google Earth technology website to help explore through Samuel Day Champlain, Marquette and Joliet, and Robert de la Salle. Okay, we're going to start with Champlain. Okay. And so as it's zooming in, you're seeing where his journey actually started, okay? And then we can scroll through here if we wanted to and see the trip that he took. So it says, at the turn of the 17th century, Samuel Day Champlain established the first permanent French colony, the Port Royal. That's where the red dot is right here. In what is now Nova Scotia, Canada, and became the first European to see the Great Lakes. Because of these accomplishments, he became known as the father of New France. Let's listen to the quick video about him.
Born to a family of mariners around 1570 in a French harbor town, Champlain learned how to navigate and make nautical charts and maps. As a young man, he voyaged to Central and South America on one of his uncle's ships. Observing Spanish colonies, he wrote a secret report about Spain's territories in the New World for King Henry IV of France. King Henry was impressed. In 1603, King Henry chose Champlain to lead a scouting expedition for potential colonization sites in Canada. After 2 years of studying and mapping the region, Champlain selected a site on the peninsula of Nova Scotia for settlement. There, he founded Port Royal, France's first North American colony. A gifted leader, Champlain initiated the Order of Good Cheer. Each day, a settler and members of the neighboring Mi'kmaq tribe would gather game, fruit, and fish and prepare a banquet shared among fellow settlers and natives.
Okay, so that was just a little bit about Samuel Day Champlain. So as we look at this, you're going to see the map zoom out and show the route that I was trying to show you earlier. It says, after founding Port Royal in 1605, Champlain, guided by the Montugas and Algonquin tribes, explored the vast St. Lawrence River and learned that it linked the Atlantic Ocean and the Great Lakes. The river became a highway for New France's growing trade. In the 17th and 18th centuries, it was navigated by French hunters to obtain furs and pellets, which were then shipped back along the river to cross the Atlantic to the European buyers. The French kings took their cut of the trade income and continued to fund exploration and settlement deep within North America. Today, St. Lawrence River remains Canada's most vital commercial waterway. Shipping vessels carry up to 40 million tons of cargo along its bank. Okay, so you can see here, this is how they traveled. We're going to learn about the different vessels because not everybody used a canoe. And the more we get into this unit, you're going to find out more information about that. So this is Quebec, Canada, July 3rd, 1608. While exploring the St. Lawrence River, Champlain reached another optimal site for settlement. On July 3rd, 1608, he established the Quebec City, New France's second permanent colony. Settled just 1 year after Jamestown was founded, Quebec City became the capital of New France almost 60 years after its establishment. It only had 550 residents, 70 homes, and 1 hospital. So kind of like our little town. So Quebec is the oldest part of the city that's shown here. Then he left Quebec City and went again on the Great St. Lawrence River. He explored deeper into the interior of the continent for the next decade. He discovered other awe-inspiring bodies of water, or lakes.
He had satisfied King Henry's demand for French settlements, but Champlain didn't stop exploring. He journeyed onward, discovering more of North America. First, Champlain sailed along the east coast from Nova Scotia to Cape Cod, mapping the entire course. Next, he headed west, where he met many tribes of the St. Lawrence Valley. They agreed to guide him deeper inland into present-day Vermont and New York State. In turn, Champlain consented to help them fight the Iroquois, their enemy tribe. While on an excursion to map the lake that would become his namesake, Lake Champlain, a group of Iroquois ambushed him and his native companions. Champlain killed two of the Iroquois chiefs in the ensuing battle. The Iroquois fled, but the French became their enemies for many years to come. His allies told Champlain about magnificent lakes to the west that no European had seen. They guided him through the wondrous interior lands of North America until they reached the shores of the Great Lakes, the largest group of freshwater lakes on the planet. Champlain explored and mapped two of the five Great Lakes, Lakes Ontario and Huron. He implicitly understood their importance. They were navigable waterways that would link the treasures of the North American interior to the Atlantic Ocean, and thus to Europe. Champlain's accurate maps to the Great Lakes indeed opened the interior of North America for future exploration and trade. Beginning in 1620, Champlain devoted his life to administering the colonies until his death in 1635.
So during the 17th century, 4 French explorers plied North America's great waterways to chart and traverse the center of the continent. The explorations of Samuel de Champlain, Jacques Marquette, Louis Joliet, and René de La Salle linked together the St. Lawrence River, the Great Lakes, the Mississippi River, opening the interior of North America to the European settlement and trade. Okay, we're going to learn about Joliet and Marquette now, which is going to be the purple route.
Jacques Marquette was born in France in 1637 and eventually became a Jesuit missionary. He was assigned to evangelize, spread the word of God to native people living in Canada. There, he learned the languages of the Algonquian and Montagnais tribes and headed west to the recently discovered Great Lakes, the largest group of freshwater lakes in the world. While exploring the western end of Lake Superior in 1669, he became the first European to meet members of the Illinois tribe, who encouraged Marquette to continue exploring their lands, including an enormous waterway they called the Great River. Marquette had heard about the Great River that some locals called the Mississippi and was anxious to explore the region and share his religion further south. Soon he was organizing a mission. Louis Joliet, the son of a French colonist, was born near Quebec in 1645. As a young man, he became a well-known fur trader, educated in geography and map-making. He traded with local tribespeople deep in the woods outside of the usual trading posts. He, too, had heard of the Great River and hoped to find new sites to establish trading posts. Marquette and Joliet met in 1671 at a European settlement in present-day Michigan. Despite their different motives to expand Christianity and open up trade routes, their unique skills made them the perfect team to explore the Great River, the Mississippi. They, like others, wanted to know where the Mississippi met the sea. Some believed it led to the Gulf of Mexico, while others, in hope of a quicker route to Asia, believed it emptied into the China Sea or the Sea of Japan. It was up to Marquette and Joliet to find out the truth.
So it says in the mid-1600s, stories from the native tribes about the mightiest waterway in North America, then called the Great River, abunded. A French missionary, Jacques Marquette, and a young Quebec hunter, Louis Joliet, had a fateful meeting here in Sault Ste. Marie, the first European settlement in the American Midwest. A church in Sault Ste. Marie marks the spot of where this mission started. On May 17, 1673, Marquette and Joliet embarked on their journey, although they didn't reach the mouth of the Mississippi, stopping instead here at the confluence with the Arkansas River. They traveled far enough to confirm its route. This was an 800-mile journey.
They departed in May of 1673 with a crew of 5 men, 2 canoes, supplies, and trade goods. In 2 months, Marquette and Joliet explored over 800 miles of the river's course, discovered 2 smaller rivers, the Missouri and Ohio, and reached the intersection of the Arkansas and Mississippi rivers. Along the way, they made alliances with the indigenous tribes. Warned that hostile Spanish settlements were nearby, they decided to end their journey 450 miles from the Gulf of Mexico. Yet, they were able to conclude that the Mississippi did in fact flow into the Gulf of Mexico since it had not turned west.
So then we went to the late 1600s, and on their trip back north, members of the Illinois tribe told Marquette and Joliet about an alternate route to the Great Lakes by canoeing up the Illinois and Des Plaines rivers and portaging across a small prairie. They reached Lake Michigan. Joliet recognized the potential of the prairie land for farming. Indeed, that area between the Des Plaines River and the Lake Michigan was settled and eventually grew to what we know as now is Chicago. So many people spent the winter there. He actually died in May of 1675, but he did return to Quebec to become a professor. The last explorer we're going to look at is La Salle. Okay, La Salle was a fortune-seeking explorer who turned New France from a couple of colonies to an enormous empire. In 1673, he met Marquette and Joliet, explored the Mississippi River. They established Fort Frontenac, which is what we see in this picture, on the eastern tip of Lake Ontario. With this, he controlled the fur trade.
La Salle was born to a wealthy family in France in 1643 and educated as a priest. But adventure and riches lured him away from the quiet life of priesthood. He revoked his vows and in 1667 sailed to New France to seek his fortune. Within 2 years, La Salle established himself as a successful fur trader in Montreal. He befriended the governor of New France, Louis de Buade de Frontenac. In 1673, de Frontenac commissioned La Salle to build a fort on the eastern edge of Lake Ontario. Naming it Fort Frontenac, La Salle armed it with French soldiers who only allowed French traders to access the lucrative fur trade around the Great Lakes. The French king, Louis XIV, pleased with France's military hold on the fur trade territory, rewarded La Salle with the exclusive right to explore the Mississippi River in its entirety. To facilitate his Mississippi exploration, in early 1679, La Salle established Fort Niagara on the western side of Lake Ontario at the mouth of the Niagara River. Upriver on the other side of Niagara Falls, he constructed the Griffin, the first sailing vessel to travel the interior of North America.
Okay, so since he had been granted the exclusive right by the French king to explore and fortify the Great Lakes and the entire Mississippi River, he prepared his journeys by building his first ship to sail on the Great Lakes. He constructed an enormous armed ship, and he named this the Griffin, on the Niagara River, upstream from its famous waterfalls. Upon its completion in July 1679, La Salle sailed west against the current, through the vast Great Lakes and on his way to the Mississippi. Through the Niagara River, it is not as long as the Mississippi. It is incredibly powerful. The river carries all the water between Lake Erie to Lake Ontario and the Niagara Falls. In 1880, it became the first North American waterway to be used for hydroelectric power. It produces 4.4 gigawatts of power. In January 1682, after building 2 more forts along the way, La Salle finally reached the Mississippi River in January of 1682. After 3 months and 1,200 miles of canoeing, La Salle reached the mouth of the mighty Mississippi. He claimed the entire territory from the St. Lawrence River to the Gulf of Mexico for France, naming it Louisiana in honor of his king.
In January 1682, he at last reached the mighty Mississippi and began his perilous journey south. 3 months and 1,200 miles later, he reached his ultimate goal, the mouth of the Mississippi River. La Salle took possession of the territory, naming it Louisiana in honor of the French king, Louis XIV. With the addition of the Louisiana Territory, New France extended from the St. Lawrence River in Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. La Salle's campaign of exploration and fort building gained an empire for France. His forts kept the English settlements confined to the East Coast, and his claim of the Louisiana Territory doubled France's lands in North America. For nearly a century, France controlled a third of the continent, making it the richest and most powerful European kingdom.
Okay, so that is going to conclude our adventures on the Explorers. So I hope you found this interesting. Remember, the red map is going to be for Chaplin, the purple is Joliet and Marquette, and then the yellow is LaSalle.